Welcome to part one of Justin Baldoni's deposition for October 7, 2025. I noticed that last time I did not actually tell y'all's who was in the room when Justin Baldoni was doing his deposition. And so I'm going to tell you for today's. So for people wondering, Blake Lively did show up, but on Zoom. So it's Blake Lively, Melissa Nathan, Zach, um, someone from Veritex, and then Alora Esquire, where they're in via Zoom. And then when it came down to present in the deposition room, it was Steve Sarwitz, Jennifer Abel, Jamie Heath, and the videographer, Jonathan Hernandez. We start off with Mr. Gottlieb. He says, "Good morning, Mr. Baldoni." "Good morning. Have you ever been sexually harassed?" "Yes." "When?" "That I have reported or just in my life?" Let's start with times you've talked about. Harassed. I believe I spoke about a time when I was in the Burke Williams spa in West Hollywood, and I was in the hot tub waiting for a massage, and I had my shorts on, my bathing suit shorts on, and there was a gentleman that was like multiple hot tubs, and he was in another hot tub, and I saw him look at me, which I was used to, looks and things, and then he joined me in my hot tub, and he started to share. He was a producer or a manager. And then he tried to get me to take my bathing suit off because he said that all the other actors and celebrities go in the hot tub naked. I said I wasn't comfortable with that, so I jumped in the other hot tub. And then he followed me into that hot tub and he was nude. And I was sitting in the hot tub, and then he walked right up to me fully nude. And then he sat in the hot tub with me. He continued to try to get me to take off my bathing suit. And I left. And I think you told the story in an interview with Glamour magazine, is that right? I don't know which magazine it was. I remember talking about it only once, and it was right after a speech that I gave. Okay, after that TED Talk that you gave? Yes, at TED Women. Do you recall being asked a question prompting that answer? Did you ever feel like you were harassed or victimized on set? I don't remember that. Okay, but as you sit here today, this is the first example that you have brought up in response to my question of whether you've ever been sexually harassed. That's the first response that I think you asked me if I've talked about it publicly. Okay, yeah. Why did you feel harassed by what this producer did? Well, he was asking me to get naked in the hot tub with him and standing very close to me with his naked genitals, like intentionally walking close to my face. It was just him and I in there, and he was using that he's a successful manager to try to get me to do something I didn't want to do, and it was very sexual. It made you uncomfortable? You could say that, yeah. And you told him that you didn't want him to do that? Yes. And then he did it again? Yes. And then you left? Yes. Why did you perceive this person to have power, or how did he seem powerful to you? He said that he was powerful. I don't think I felt that he was powerful necessarily, but he was claiming he knew all these A-list stars, and he would say things like Clooney is in here all the time without his shorts on, and referring to, I don't know. I was maybe 25, and yeah, he was older, much older. Did he touch you? No. Did he threaten you? No. So he didn't assault you. I wouldn't call it assault. I don't believe I characterized it as assault. I didn't say you did, sir. Yeah. You were bigger and stronger than this guy, right? I would imagine I was. This wasn't someone the size of Dwayne Johnson or The Rock or something like that. It was not. So if it had come to it, you probably could have knocked the guy out. Shapiro, objection. Justin, I'm not much of a fighter. I would have left. Gottlieb, you didn't work for the guy, right? No. So you had no employment relationship with him? No, I didn't. Okay, do you know who he was? I think he told me his name, but did you try and find him after the incident and talk to him about it? No. Did you find him before you talked about this event in Glamour magazine? Shapiro, objection. Justin, no. Gottlieb, you didn't want to give him an opportunity to take accountability for his actions to make it right? I didn't name him. But you described him and described who he was friends with and the spa you were in. Shapiro, objection. Justin, I don't know if I described who his friends were. Gottlieb, do you know his name as you sit here today? No. I think you've already talked about your experience with your college girlfriend. Is that right? Yes. Do you believe that your college girlfriend sexually assaulted you? I do. Do you believe she raped you? I'm not sure if I believe she raped me, no. If I understand some of the talks you've given about this is something that you sort of remembered or confronted during therapy? Shapiro, objection. Justin, yes. Yes. Gottlieb, how many years after this event or events occurred would you say you confronted it through therapy? Maybe starting about 10 years after? Okay, and I'm not going to ask you about conversations you've had with your therapist or your lawyers in this deposition. But apart from those conversations with your therapist, what did you do to try to piece back together what had happened to you that 10 years prior? I mean, it was a lot of therapy, a lot of meditation, thinking about it, going back and forth. It wasn't just one moment, and then suddenly it's like, oh, that's what happened. It was a journey. And the memories, they shift and they come and go, and then you justify. But it was just a lot of therapy, conversations with my wife. How long did I think you've described this as a very bad relationship? Is that fair? It was not a good relationship. The relationship with a college girlfriend? Yeah. How long did it last? I believe about a year and a half. Did you all have mutual friends? I believe at that point it was just we all kind of had the same friends. You had a group of friends that in college, sorry, what years of college was this for you? Freshman year going into sophomore year. Okay, so you had a group of friends that you all hung out with, and sorry, I need to back up. Where did you go to college? Cal State Long Beach. Okay, so freshman and sophomore at Cal State Long Beach. That's a big school, right? Yes. And you and your girlfriend had a relationship that lasted some amount of time. I imagine there are other people who knew you were dating. Shapiro, objection. Justin, she didn't attend the school. She didn't go to college. Gottlieb, did your friends at college know you were dating? Yeah, a few of them did. Okay, before you talked about what happened to you in public, did you go back to talk to your college girlfriend? No. Did you try to find her? No. Did you ever attempt to communicate to let her know that you were going to be accusing her of sexual abuse in public? Shapiro, objection. Justin, no. Gottlieb, did you ever go back to talk to any of your college friends or people that you might have hung out with mutually to tell them what you were going to do? I don't know anybody from back then. Do you have any idea whether or not your college girlfriend would agree with the way you have remembered the events relating to the losing of your virginity? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I don't know what she would think. I don't know who she is anymore. Gottlieb, but you thought it was okay to go on TV and tell the world that your college girlfriend had sexually abused you without ever talking to her about it. Shapiro, objection. Justin, I wasn't aware I needed to ask her permission to share my story. Gottlieb, am I right that one of the things that was most traumatic about this to you is that you were saving yourself for marriage? That was a part of it. I also just wasn't ready. And so you were a virgin at age 18 when you met her in college? Yes. And I believe your description of what happened is that you woke up in the middle of the night and she was taking it from you. Is that an accurate description of your words? No. Shapira, objection. Oh, Gottlieb. Okay, how would you describe it? I think you're confusing two different stories. I don't, okay, mean to, say you're wrong, but that wasn't the story that I shared in my book. Okay, you never described the incident when you lost your virginity as waking up and discovering your college girlfriend was taking it from you without your consent? No, that wasn't the story of how I lost my virginity. Okay, I'm mistaken then? Yeah, there was a moment in the relationship where I was woken up by her on top of me having sex with me, but that was after I had already lost my virginity. What is her name? Shapiro, objection. I'm going to instruct you not to answer that. Gottlieb, on what basis? Shapiro, it's irrelevant and not calculated to lead to discoverable evidence. Gottlieb, this is not a proper basis to instruct a witness to not answer a question. Shapiro, I'm instructing him not to answer. Gottlieb, are you going to follow your counsel's instruction? I am. Would you be capable of telling me her name, but for your counsel's instruction? I would. Okay, are there any other incidents relating to sexual harassment or abuse that you have suffered that you have talked about publicly? I don't believe so. Did these experiences inform why you wanted to make It Ends With Us into a movie? Not, I don't know if it was a conscious thing. Once I had read it, once I was making it, it informed how I wanted to make the movie. But it wasn't like the reason for making the movie. Okay, I think I understand you. It wasn't the originating seed. No. But it did inform how you approach the making of the movie, your personal experiences. It 100% informed the narrative arc of the film. And yeah, I would say the adaptation from the book to the script, and also how I was able to connect with it. And it obviously has informed your podcast, correct? By it, I mean your experiences we've just discussed. My sexual trauma? Yes, has informed my podcast. It's not the reason I did my podcast, but there was absolutely moments where we discussed sexual trauma And yeah, it's one of the many things we discuss. Okay, and I will stick with your framing, which I like, which is not the thing that caused it originally, but informed in some ways. So it's the same with respect to this question. Did your experiences inform what you wanted out of Wayfarer Studios? Shapiro, objection. Justin, did my experiences with sexual trauma, Gottlieb, inform in any way? Inform in any way what I wanted out of Wayfarer Studios? Not consciously. Perhaps subconsciously? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I'm not an expert on the subconscious, but I imagine the subconscious exists in all of us. Gottlieb, but you do believe that work is service, right? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I believe that work should be and can be a form of service, correct? Gottlieb, and you believe in the tenets of the Baha'i faith? Is that a question? Yeah. Do I believe? Yes, absolutely. And Wayfarer is a Baha'i-inspired organization, is it not? Wayfarer Studios? I think we were very mindful, actually, to not make it a Baha'i-inspired organization, but it was inspired by the principles of the Baha'i faith. I don't believe it's officially labeled a Baha'i-inspired organization, and there are reasons behind that. Sure, it's not a Baha'i-only studio, right? Absolutely not. But it is nonetheless inspired by many of the principles or tenets of the Baha'i faith. Is that fair? By the belief system of the people who started it, inspired by it? Yeah. And that would be, at least in its current form, you and Mr. Sarowitz. Correct. And you both share the Baha'i faith. We both. Shapiro, objection. Justin, we both share that we are both Baha'is, yes. Gottlieb, and you both have talked about publicly many times some of what you consider to be the important tenets of the Baha'i faith. Shapiro, objection. Justin, I think that's accurate, yeah. Gottlieb, okay, did you ever tell anyone you ran a Baha'i set? A Baha'i set? I have no idea. I don't know what a Baha'i set would be. If I did, you're welcome to show me. Did you ever hear Mr. Sarowitz refer to your sets as any of your sets as a Baha'i set? I have not. Would you even know how to describe what a Baha'i set is? A set with all Baha'is? I don't know. Well, so you're the director and you're the co-founder of the studio, and I'm here and I'm asking you, okay? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, someone has told me that your set is a Baha'i set. Okay? Are you giving me a Shapiro objection? Just let me finish my question. Okay. So let's establish some principles. You're the co-founder of Wayfarer Studios, correct? Correct. You were the director of It Ends With Us, correct? Correct. Producer? No. Lead actor? Second lead actor. Second lead actor, and I come to you now and I say, Mr. Baldoni, you're the director of this film. You're the co-founder of the studio. Someone has told me this is the set of It Ends With Us is a Baha'i set. What does that mean? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I have no idea. Okay, I want to read you something Mr. Sarowitz says, and you watched some of his depositions, so you may have been in for talking about some of this. I just want to know if you agree, disagree, or is this from his deposition or something else? It's not. It's something he said elsewhere, so I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to ask you your thoughts on it. Okay, this is from a talk that he gave in 2020. He said, as read, art reflects society, and society reflects art, and we want to make art that raises spirits. That's the number one thing. If you really want to say what Justin and I are doing, what he does so well, and I support him in doing, is he makes movies that uplift our spirits. And I'm so happy to be his partner in doing that. So it really is another practical application of faith. Do you agree with what Mr. Sarowitz said there? I agree that those are his feelings and that it's really nice. Yeah. Do you share his feelings with respect to what I just read you? Can you read it one more time? As read, art reflects society and society reflects art, and we want to make art that raises spirits. That's the number one thing. If you really want to say what Justin and I are doing together, what he does so well, and I support him in doing, is he makes movies that uplift our spirits. And I will stop right there because the rest of it is surplusage. Shapiro, are you going to pose a question? Gottlieb, he asked me to repeat what I read so he can decide if he agrees with it or not, and I have just done that. Justin, yeah, I think that I would agree. That's our intention, 100%. Gottlieb, now let me read to you what he said 2 sentences before. He said, as read. So I look at Hollywood right now. TV and movies is a lot of what it is. Gratuitous sex, gratuitous violence is things that lower the soul. Do you agree with Mr. Sarowitz that in Hollywood, gratuitous sex and gratuitous violence lower the soul? Shapiro, objection. Justin, me and Steve have had many conversations where we tend to disagree on things that lower the soul. So I think that we are in agreement most of the time. And I also think that a blanket statement like that would be hard to agree with. Gottlieb, do you agree with him on the proposition that gratuitous sex in Hollywood films is a bad thing? I think where Steve and I would have conversations is what is gratuitous and what is not. As Steve is somebody who wouldn't even want there to be a cigarette or marijuana in a film, even if it had to do with the storyline. And any sex at all, at times, Steve has felt was gratuitous. So we've had different conversations about that. Okay. So we have to define gratuitous before I can agree with his statement. All right, let's start from the premise of, do you think gratuitous sex, however you define it, not how Mr. Sarowitz defines it? Yeah. Do you think that is a problem in Hollywood films? Shapiro, objection. Justin, there's a lot of films that are made in Hollywood, and I'm not trying to dodge your question, but I just want to be mindful of generalizing. I think what we have, I believe we put so much sex and sexualize so many things that we become numb to it. And over time, since we become numb to it, and I'm speaking generally as a we, collective we, in order to have more of a shock effect, that I think that's where Hollywood has gone and made like sex has become just something that you expect to see oftentimes that doesn't actually have to do with the storyline, or I don't I don't know if it necessarily moves the plot forward. So in that sense, I guess I would agree. And I think that in general, Hollywood doesn't make movies for the soul much anymore. It does, I mean, there are certain people that do. But I'm just saying it's definitely become much more about attention and money and just competing with other places for people's attention, and whatever can shock them the most is what wins. Gottlieb. And you founded Wayfair to be different from what you just described, is that right? Shapiro. Objection. Justin, I did. Gottlieb, you founded Wayfarer to be lights in the darkness, is that correct? That was a part of the mission. You, in founding Wayfarer, said that in Steve Sarowitz you had resources and a partner who shared values and beliefs. Is that fair? Yeah. Do you recall saying about Wayfarer Studios that you and Mr. Heath were making a concerted effort to build a spiritual enterprise in every sense of the word, where everyone is free to have their own beliefs and express opinions that may be different from the executives or the shareholders, where there is true unity and equality across the board, and where we're mindful of the positions of power and how those power dynamics work? Was that was the question do I remember saying that? Do you remember saying that? It sounds more like something I've written. I'm not sure if does it sound like something you would write or say? I don't know if I'm that eloquent when I speak, but it sounds like it's definitely in line with something that I believe or aspire to. If I told you that quote appeared out of a publication on Baha'i teachings.org entitled Wayfarer Studios aims to be a light in the darkness, would that refresh your recollection at all? Shapiro, objection. Justin, that would confirm it was probably something that I wrote versus I said. Gottlieb, okay, and do you believe that you have created a spiritual enterprise where everyone is free to have their own beliefs and express their own opinions that may be different from the executives or the shareholders? Shapiro, objection. Justin, do I believe I've created it? Gottlieb, along with others, do you believe Wayfarer Studios, you've achieved that objective? To be frank, I don't know that it's something that could ever be fully 100% achieved. I know we strive for it, but I wouldn't be comfortable saying we've achieved it. Okay, you strive for it. Strived, yeah. And in creating the culture at Wayfarer Studios, do you believe that you have tried to be mindful of the positions of power and how those power dynamics work? Shapiro, objection. Justin, again, it's something that we strive for, not perfect at, but strived. Gottlieb, as the director of It Ends With Us, do you believe you had more power than members of the cast or crew that were not directors? Shapiro, objection. Justin, in thinking about power dynamics, yes. Gottlieb, and you supervised essentially everyone who was on the set directly or indirectly, is that right? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I'm not sure if I would consider that my role as a director. Gottlieb, were you ultimately responsible for what happened on the set of It Ends With Us? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I wouldn't put that solely on the director, no, but I was partly. Gottlieb, I didn't ask you if you responsible. I didn't ask you if you were the only person. Shapiro, can you not interrupt his answer? Gottlieb, you're right. You're right. Finish your answer. I apologize. Oh, I just said I wasn't. I don't think I was the only person responsible, but I was part of that responsibility, of course. Gottlieb, okay, so I'm not asking if you were the only person who was responsible, but as the director, are you ultimately responsible for what occurs on the set of your movies? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I'm not sure that I would completely agree with that, the way that question is framed. Gottlieb, okay, what is it about the question that you disagree with the framing of the question? I just think the premise is off. what piece of the premise is off? One of the director's jobs is to bring on a great team, and each of those team members have responsibilities. I think it would be impossible for a director to manage everybody. So there are department heads and producers and executive producers and all kinds of various jobs that each have people reporting under them and that each have their own responsibility. So, like, if you know something happened to an extra, I don't know if that's ultimately the director's responsibility. If the catering was cold that day, I don't know if that's the director's responsibility. If a stunt person was killed, I don't know if that's the director's responsibility. There is a stunt department. So that's what I mean by the premise, at least my understanding of what you were asking. What about what the director does? Shapiro, objection. Gottlieb, who is responsible for that? Could you be more specific? Well, the director is not responsible for the caterers or the stunt doubles, but what about the director? Is the director responsible for what the director does? Yes, of course. I was just answering your question to the best that I could. Okay, so we can at least agree that as the director of It Ends With Us, you were responsible for what you did on the set. I was responsible for a lot, yeah. What you did and what some other people did that we'll have to define as we go through the day, but not everything. Is that fair? Shapiro, objection. Justin, not solely responsible for everything, but responsible, of course. I'm the director. Gottlieb, okay, did Wayfarer Studios have policies and procedures that were in place during the filming of It Ends With Us? Shapiro, objection. Justin, policies and procedures? Gottlieb, any policies and procedures that were in place? I believe so. And were those policies and procedures applicable to you as the director of the film to the best of your knowledge? Shapiro, objection. Justin, you have to be more specific on what policies and procedures that you mean. Okay. Stenographic reporter, Exhibit 20 for the record, Exhibit 20 marked for identification. Gottlieb, Mr. Baldoni, you've been handed a document marked as Exhibit 20. Is a document bearing the Bates numbers Wayfarer _ 139046 through 139076. And you can take a look. It's a lengthy document. Am I on this document? Take a look through the first few pages, and the first thing I'm going to ask you is if you recognize it, and then I will ask you some more questions. Mr. Baldoni, I think you've now had a chance to look at the cover letter? Yes. And the table of contents? I haven't looked at all of the table of contents of it. You flipped through it? Would you like me to look at them? There's not going to be a quiz on it, I promise. Sure. The first thing I want you to ask is, have you ever seen this? Not the text chain that's on the front, but the employee handbook that begins on the page with the Bates number 139049 on it. I believe years ago, yes. Okay, and you and Mr. Sarwitz sign off on the introductory letter to this handbook. Is that correct? Our names are on there, so yes, we do. You are the co-chairman of the studio. Is that correct? That is correct. There is no other chairman of the studio you're aware of. Shapiro, objection. Justin, just Steve Sarwitz and myself. Gottlieb, what are the responsibilities that go along with being, to the best of your understanding, the co-chairman of Wayfarer Studios? My responsibilities? Any responsibilities that you believe apply to you. My responsibilities are to help select and pick who I believe, along with my co-chairman, to be the best managers for the company, to help the company in its creative direction, more bird's-eye view of ideally, hopefully, where we're going, and then to consult with the CEO and president and upper management. And my specific responsibilities also to help with creative for the various projects that we have. Okay, based on my time. You see in the cover letter that you and Mr. Sarwitz have written for this handbook a reference to Wayfarer Studios being a Baha'i-inspired organization. I see that, yes. We were talking a little bit about that before. It's not a yes. This is consistent with what you previously testified to? Shapiro, objection. Justin, yeah, I did not remember. We had many conversations about actually not calling it a Baha'i-inspired organization. So I think legally we did not. And that was mostly because we didn't ever want to make anybody feel like they were working at a religious company. So I believe an early version of this did not have it on there, which is where my memory was coming from. But I do see it here, and I don't deny that. Gottlieb, okay, are you aware of a later version of this handbook in which that was removed? I'm not aware of a later version. I imagine this is the most recent version. I believe there have been different versions of this various letter over the years. And when you say legally you were not a Baha'i-inspired organization, I'm not going to be asking you for your legal opinions during this deposition. No. What are you saying? It was just in the starting of an organization that relates to the Baha'i faith. We did not want our company to in any way be a part of the Baha'i faith as an organization. I see. So that's essentially what I mean, is that because the Baha'i faith's internal government, if you will, is different than maybe like the Catholic Church or other Christian organizations, there is a Baha'i organization that actually is a government in the Baha'i faith. And we did not want a company to legally be tied or associated with an official Baha'i organization. I understand. So that was the debate and the conversation around like a Baha'i inspired organization and what that actually means. Okay, do you see where you've written with Mr. Sarowitz? This handbook has been written to serve as a guide for our relationship and the various work rules? Yes. And then do you see if you flip a page over in the table of contents, there is a series of categories. I'm looking, sir, at page 139050. There is a list of categories of different types of rules that apply to employees of the company. Are you looking at employment? Underneath employment? I'm just asking you if you see in the table of contents a bunch of different categories of policies, procedures, and rules. Yes, I do. That apply to the company. I do see that. Okay, if you flip ahead to page 5 of this document, which is Wayfarer 139053, do you see at the top of the page equal employment opportunities, anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, and anti-retaliation policy at the top? Yes, I do. And have you ever read this policy? I don't know if I've read this one, no. You don't know or you think you haven't. The policy that is directly in front of me, I don't know if I have read this policy. Okay, so do you know if you've ever had any kind of training on this policy, this anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, and anti-retaliation policy? Yes, I believe I have. When was that? I think every couple years. When was the last time you attended one? In person? At all, virtually or in person? Virtually, I completed mine last week. Okay, for this year. For the year 2025? Yes. Prior to that, do you recall the last time you had training on this policy? I imagine it was 2 years before that. Do you recall there ever being a training on anti-discrimination and anti-harassment and anti-retaliation during the production of It Ends With Us? Yes. Did you attend that training? I did. Did you attend that training in person? Yes. Where was it? In our production offices? On the set in New Jersey? Not a set, but the production offices in New Jersey. Okay, the production offices in New Jersey near where the strike that. Yeah, strike that. All right. Is a bad question. Okay, we'll come back to that. During the training, do you remember going through examples of scenarios of types of conduct that would be a violation or a potential violation of this anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, and anti-retaliation policy? I can't remember specifics, but I do. That was the bulk of the harassment training. Was there a presentation? It was a man. Yeah, we were in person, but the man was over Zoom. Okay, from my memory. Were there slides? I'm assuming there were, yes. Okay, so if I showed you some slides, you might be able to tell me if they were the ones you saw. To be honest, if you showed me slides, I would not know if they were the exact ones I saw. It was years ago. I think I said might be able to tell me, but okay, fair enough. Do you see at the top of page 5 in the second paragraph, second sentence, the sentence as read, Wayfarer Studios strictly prohibits discrimination, harassment, or retaliation against employees, applicants, or any other covered person? I see that. And that's a Wayfarer Studios policy, right? Yes. Do you agree with it? Yes. You've done your best to follow it? I have done my best to follow it, yes. Do you see a long list of characteristics that under the Wayfarer Studios policies are protected? Shapiro, objection. Justin, may I read it? Gottlieb, sure thing. I've read this paragraph. Okay, you've read the paragraph that lists out the protected characteristics, correct? Yes. So you see that gender is protected? I do. You see that sex is protected? Yes. And you see that further includes pregnancy, breastfeeding, childbirth? I do. Do you see that height and weight are also protected characteristics? Height, weight, and yes. And do you see in the next line down after that paragraph the sentence that says, as read, all Wayfarer Studios employees, officers, principals, agents, workers, and representatives are prohibited from engaging in unlawful discrimination, harassment, and or retaliation? Yes. And you were an officer of Wayfarer Studios, is that correct? As co-chairman, I believe I am. And you were also an agent or an employee because you were hired to be the director of It Ends With Us. Shapiro, objection. Justin, yes. Gottlieb, and you certainly represented Wayfarer Studios in your role as his co-chairman, right? I believe I am. And in fact, you and Mr. Sarowitz are the highest people in the hierarchy of Wayfarer, is that right? Shapiro, objection. Justin, yeah. Gottlieb, ultimately, the CEO and upper management answer to you and Mr. Sarowitz, is that right? Ultimately, yes. In other words, if you and Mr. Sarowitz decide that you had it with Mr. Heath, it's your decision whether to get rid of him, right? Yes. Do you want to tell him or should I? I think you should. It would go over smoother. So do you see that one paragraph down from the sentence I just read, the anti-harassment policy? I see that. And do you see where it says, I have not read this, so, okay, can I read it? Why don't you read that? I'm going to ask you questions about the next 3 paragraphs. So if you want to read the next 3 paragraphs, then I will ask you questions about them. I think I've gotten through them now. Okay, so back on the previous page, page 5 of this document, in the start of the anti-harassment policy, do you see the sentence that reads, as read, Wayfarer Studios prohibits harassment, disrespectful, or unprofessional conduct by any employee of the company, including supervisors, managers, and coworkers. Do you see that? I do. Do you understand what that means? That we prohibit harassment by anyone at the company. Okay, do you see then the sentence that starts with harassment may be verbal, written, or physical conduct? I do. Okay, so if you carry that sentence over to the next page, as read, harassment may be verbal, written, or physical conduct. Go to in front of the A, B, and C, as read, that A has the purpose or effect of creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment, or B has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance, or C otherwise adversely affects an individual's employment opportunities. Do you see that? I do. Do you recall ever receiving training with respect to any of those concepts in the sentence I just read to you? I believe I do. Do you recall receiving training to discuss that harassment can be conduct that has either the purpose or the effect of creating a hostile or offensive work environment? I do. Okay, and do you see that in the next paragraph, the sentence that reads, as read, sexual harassment includes harassment that is not necessarily sexual in nature. Do you see that? Yes. You've been trained on that concept. I believe I have. And you see further down, there's another A, B, and C here because, of course, we lawyers love to put A, B's, and C's into our documents. Do you see subsection C says, as read, such conduct has the purpose or effect of substantially and unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance by creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive working environment? Do you see that? I do. Do you understand what that means? I believe I do. And you've been trained on that as well. I believe I have. Okay, do you see where it says, as read, sexual harassment may include a range of subtle and not so subtle behaviors? Yes. And it can include, as read, sexual jokes or innuendos, commentary about an individual's body, sexual prowess or sexual deficiencies, or touching. Shapiro, objection. Gottlieb, I know I left some words out. Yeah. But do you see the words that I read there? Yes. In this policy? Yes. And you've been trained on this as well. I believe I have. And because of that training, you understand that the policy prohibits behavior that has these effects on employees, regardless of whether those effects were intended. Is that right? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I believe so. Yes. Gottlieb, okay, if you look then at supervisor manager responsibilities, do you see where it reads, as read? If any supervisor or manager becomes aware of a violation of this policy, they are obligated to report the violation to human resource management so Wayfarer Studios can investigate and, if appropriate, take corrective action. Yes. You understood that was your responsibility as a supervisor or manager. Shapiro, objection. Justin, yeah. Gottlieb, and that was Mr. Heath's responsibility as a supervisor or manager? Yes. On the next page, do you see the section entitled Investigation? Yes. Do you see where it reads, as read, any reported allegations of harassment, discrimination, or retaliation will be promptly and thoroughly investigated by qualified personnel in an impartial manner? Do you see that? I do. Do you see it says, as read, Wayfarer Studios will ensure that these personnel will use the evidence to reach reasonable conclusions? Yes. And then one sentence down after that, as read, Wayfarer Studios will maintain appropriate documentation and tracking to ensure reasonable progress is made. Do you see all that? Uh-huh. And then there is a discussion of what happens at the close of investigation. Do you see that? Yes. And you see that depending on what's found in an investigation, Wayfarer Studios will consider appropriate options for remedial actions and resolution. And if misconduct is found, Wayfarer Studios shall take prompt corrective action as appropriate. Do you see that? Yes. Was any investigation of the type described here in this paragraph conducted for the conduct that is at issue in this litigation? Shapiro, objection. Justin, not until this lawsuit was filed and we were made aware of the conduct. Gottlieb, so I think your testimony is this lawsuit was filed. Uh-huh. You were made aware of conduct? We were made aware of allegations of misconduct. Okay, and then you launched an investigation? Shapiro, objection. Justin, correct. Gottlieb, And is that because, am I understanding you correctly to say you were made aware of allegations in the filing of this lawsuit that you were unaware of previously? Correct. What are the allegations as you sit here today that you understand were made in the lawsuit that you were not aware of previously? Shapiro, objection. Justin, sexual harassment, retaliation. I mean, there's a very long list that I'm sure you have that you can present me, and I can tell you that what I was aware of or what I wasn't. Gottlieb, so I will do this to try to be clear and that we understand each other. I understand sexual harassment and retaliation to be legal labels that can include different incidents that might occur that inform those legal labels. Is that how you understand them? Shapiro, objection. Justin, can you say that one more time? Gottlieb, let me try it a different way because that's going to take us down a lengthy rabbit hole that you won't like and your lawyers won't like and I will regret. You said that you had not been aware of allegations of sexual harassment and retaliation until the filing of the lawsuit. Yes. Okay, do you understand that there were factual allegations that informed Miss Lively's complaint asserting sexual harassment and retaliation? Can you break down what you mean by that? Do you understand that Miss Lively's complaint or this lawsuit that you have said led to the launching of an investigation? That lawsuit included allegations of events that took place on specific dates and times that Miss Lively asserted constituted sexual harassment and retaliation. Do you understand that? Yes, I understand that. Okay, is it your testimony that you were unaware of the incidents that were described in the complaint? Or is it your testimony that you were unaware that Ms. Lively thought that those incidents constituted sexual harassment and retaliation? Shapiro, objection. Justin, my testimony is that this lawsuit and the New York Times article and the CRD complaint was the first time I had heard many of these allegations that evidently I was at or a part of, which I completely disagree with whether or not they happened. That said, the reason we launched an investigation was because this was the first official complaint lawsuit against us. So that investigation happened because it was past the HR complaint situation. It was now an official, very public situation. Gottlieb, is it your understanding of the Wayfair policy that in order to investigate allegations of sexual harassment and retaliation, that an official HR complaint needs to be filed by the complainant? I'm not sure. In fact, didn't we just look at on page 6 of the policy in the section entitled Supervisor and Manager Responsibility, there's a line that says, as read, if any supervisor or manager becomes aware of a violation of this policy, they are obligated to report the violation to Human Resources Management so Wayfarer Studios can investigate and, if appropriate, take corrective action. Shapiro, objection. Justin, I see that, yes. Gottlieb, so it is actually under your Wayfarer Studios policy. It's not incumbent upon the person who feels that they have been harassed to come forward with a formal HR complaint. Is that right? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I don't know if there is another part of this that says there needs to be a formal HR complaint or not, so I don't know. Gottlieb, okay, you don't see one as you're sitting here looking at this page, do you? Under the box that says supervisor or manager responsibilities? Shapiro, objection. Justin, no, I don't see it. Gottlieb, okay, you testified yesterday, I believe. You've never read the New York Times article, is that correct? Never personally read it, no. You've never sat down to read the article published by the New York Times written by Megan Twohey about the incidents in this case? I did not personally sit down to read it. So as you sit here today, you do not know personally anything that the article says. Shapiro, objection. Justin, no, I would not say that that's true. Gottlieb, you have no personal knowledge from your own experience of what that article says. Is that right? Justin, I have personal firsthand knowledge from my attorneys giving me point by point all that was in the article. Okay, let me try it this way because I don't want to ask you questions about your conversations with your lawyers. Other than what other people have told you, whether attorneys or anybody else, other than what other people have told you about what is in the Megan Twohey article, do you have any knowledge of what is in it? I do. And what is that based on? It's based on reading parts of it. What parts of it do you recall reading? I remember reading the beginning and then feeling sick. I remember reading some of the details around what I was being accused of. I remember seeing my private text messages on there and being very confused. I remember reading that they had launched an investigation or that they had done an investigative, she had done this investigation and gone through thousands of documents, but never spoken to me or anyone from our company. Was that troubling to you? That an investigative journalist did a New York Times article on, put my picture and my face on the cover, and didn't ask me any questions about it? I found that troubling. It's important in understanding an event that has happened and talking to the eyewitnesses, right? Shapiro, objection. Justin, are you meaning when you're an investigative journalist and you're writing for the New York Times? Gottlieb, as a human being searching for truth. Shapiro, objection. Justin, if the writer wasn't there, I would assume so. Gottlieb, one of the reasons you were upset is that you felt like there were incidents that were described that left out your perspective. Is that right? There were many reasons that I was upset. My question was, one of the reasons you were upset is because there are incidents that were described that left out your perspective on what happens. Is that right? Shapiro, objection. Justin, yes. Gottlieb, okay, relatedly, when Miss Lively sent her California Civil Rights Department complaint to you through attorneys via you, did you read it? No, not that version of it, no. Did you ever read it? Not the initial one that was sent. I think you said yesterday you didn't read Stephanie Jones's lawsuit, is that correct? No. Did you read Miss Lively's amended complaint in this case? I did. When did you read that? I think shortly after it was filed. I don't know the month. Okay, back on the policy. And I read the previous version, not that you asked me. The original complaint, I think there was a complaint and an amended complaint, pre-crosstalk. Okay, did you read the complaint that you filed in federal court before it was filed? I did. Did you read the complaint that you filed against the New York Times before it was filed? I did. Everything all the way through, to the best of my reading ability. Did you believe that everything in the New York Times complaint was truthful and accurate? I believed it to be. Did you believe that everything in the complaint and amended complaint that you filed in federal court in the Southern District of New York, everything in it and the attachment to be truthful and accurate? Shapiro, objection to form. Justin, I believed it to be. Gottlieb, okay, back on the document, page 7. Do you see the section on anti-retaliation? Yes. Do you see the policy states as read, retaliation against an individual, reporting harassment in good faith, for reporting harassment or discrimination in good faith, or for participating in an investigation of a claim of harassment or discrimination is a serious violation of this policy, and like harassment or discrimination itself will be subject to disciplinary action, which might include termination of employment, acts of retaliation, should be reported immediately and will be promptly investigated and addressed. Do you see that? I do. Do you understand that policy? I think I do. Were you trained on it? I believe I was. Do you see in the next section what an employee is supposed to do if they believe they have been subject to misconduct under the policy? I could be a little more specific with my question. Yes. The answer is yes. I was just reading it. Yes. Okay. Do you see the sentence says, as read? If an employee believes they've been subject to misconduct under this policy, they may file a complaint with the appropriate agency. Do you see that? Yes. And you see that the agencies, the Wayfarer Studios, is directing its employees to file a complaint if they believe they have been subject to misconduct under the policy are the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing and the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Do you see that? Yes. Do you know whether Ms. Lively filed complaints with these agencies? I imagine, is the CRD complaint this? My question is what you know. I don't technically know. Gottlieb, okay, I think now is a good time for a break. The videographer, we are going off the record. The time is 10:21 a.m. Recess. The videographer, we're back on the record. The time is 10:39 a.m. That wraps up part 1. See you in part 2.